Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, everybody. This is CM Kozeman. We are recording on the 25th of December 2023, and once again we are back with answers to a rich selection of questions submitted by Noah Turner, one of the long-time viewers and Patreon supporters of this channel. Basically, if you're new to this channel, the way this video works is thus. You go to Patreon, you subscribe for any amount you want, even $1 a month makes a huge difference for me, and then in exchange, you get to ask me questions which I get to answer, like this series here, and you get to see a lot of new sketches, artworks, and plot reveals from upcoming books and stuff that nobody else gets to see. So yes, I hope you support me on Patreon. Also, consider getting me a coffee on buymeacoffee.com, and also consider getting some CM Kozeman merchandise. It's the spirit of the holiday season, and you can please the people you love with tote bags, mugs, t-shirts, and everything else under the sun bearing my artworks and insignia. Anyways, let's get it on. Noah Turner is a young fan from the US states of Pennsylvania. He wants to attend to Cornell University to study biotechnology or entomology, and these are his questions. There are two previous videos similar to this one where we also answered Noah's questions. I find them really insightful because they're really broad but deep questions about early adolescent life, school life, basically growing up in general, and without much ado, let's go. How do you approach probably being smarter than everybody else? Asks Noah. Are you snobby and prideful? Well, I'm not sure if I'm smarter than anybody else in any given situation. I mean, okay, I will grant you I know a lot of stuff and I'm really good at articulating that. And I have a reasonably good memory. I have an eye for details. I kind of think I know when to speak and when to shut up. But then again, there have been times where, I don't know, I forgot my wallet in a friend's house and I spent 2 hours looking for it, where it was in plain sight. You know, all these dumb moments strike me too. The crux of this question is, how do you judge being smart, especially when it comes to yourself? Knowing a lot of facts, does that make you smart or does that make you knowledgeable? But okay, I mean, also, I will concede that in a number of cases, yes, I am probably a good speaker, charming person. I know a lot. So maybe I wouldn't call this being smarter than everybody else, but maybe I will call it having a lot to say and contribute. I don't know. However you want to put it, certainly the way to approach this thing, if you feel like you're smarter than many other people, or if people think you are smarter than many other people, the way to handle this is, once again, by being kind of quiet and reserved about it, and only deploying your skills and knowledge when it's absolutely necessary or when the social situation calls for it. In an IRL setting, you have to kind of read the room, like what's the conversation going towards? Should you pitch in? Should you not? And of course, especially among people, especially among guys, there's this playful dominance thing that goes on when like two or more quote unquote smart, whatever that means, men come into the same scene. I mean, I know from a recent interaction that I won't give any names, but I was hanging out with this like older guy who was like quite world-weary and esoteric and knowledgeable. And then immediately him and I started like this one-upmanship game, to see who's the top dog, whatever. And then somehow the conversation swung to the Bosphorus, which are, when you had a view of, the Bosphorus is the sea that runs through Istanbul, by the way. And in a clear spring day, sometimes you can see dolphins there swimming, and it's a really charming sight. So something happened, and like we were talking about whether Turkish people treat animals better compared to Occidental people or not. And then it kind of evolved into a debate, and I think I kind of got that debate. But of course, this guy wasn't gonna let me go scot-free. So we were talking about dolphins in the Bosphorus right after that. And he said, well, you got this flocks of dolphins there. And I caught the chink in his armor. I was like, I do believe it's a pod of dolphins, you know? And then he's like furiously Googled this and like, yes, it was called a pod of dolphins. How nice. Sometimes you do have these moments of sparring between guys. I mean, it's kind of inevitable, and I mean, it's not bad. But in whether you're having these sparring matches, or whether you're trying to impress somebody, or whether you're in a like more casual social setting, I think one of the key elements to being smart, if you want to avoid ending up like this really obnoxious TV series, The Big Bang Theory. And there they have this kind of like a really awful trope of a geeky, nerdy character, Sheldon Cooper. I really, really hate this character, and I really don't like The Big Bang Theory. So if you want to avoid looking like that, there are a few things. One, maybe you don't have to speak out all the time, you know, just listen. That's number one. Two, if you do find yourself in a kind of sparring match or like a smartness contest, always know the value of saying when you don't know stuff, you know? Oh, I really don't know what that is. Let's look it up. This way you will be able to kind of diffuse competitions and turn them into a more friendly interaction. And you kind of signal to the other guy, you know, I ain't got no bone to pick with you. I don't have any axe to grind, but only my toes to burnish. But then again, you also have other situations where like the classroom situation, which gets echoed in the workplace later on as you mature. And in the classroom situation, if you're smarter than these people, you know, I mean, certain things will happen to you. People will sometimes look down on you or try to put you in a spot. Just shrug these off, or try to shrug them off. And usually what happens is people will try to make you do the work and then take credit for it. And then you may come to the conclusion that because you're smarter than people in a workplace or a classroom setting, you may actually choose to be lazy. And that's actually a very noble choice, you know. Why let those freeloaders get things off your back? And so that's another rule for quote unquote being smart in a group setting. And yes, when I was younger, there were obviously lots of times where I did not shut up. I probably did come across as like snobby or prideful or like that kid who wouldn't stop speaking. I think it's an acclimatization course. Like you have to run through that a bit before realizing that silence is golden and you don't have to prove anything to anybody. So also being aware of that loop, and also sometimes, yes, being a little cringe, being a little like, I mean, when you're younger, I think it's also healthy to be a bit competitive and brash, you know. But there are different sort of nuances of this thing, and I hope you catch it when you can. That's all I'll say about this matter. Okay, continuing this question, Noah asks, how do you go about seeming confident without being snobby? I think we tackled the snobbishness issue previously, and I think confidence is the key, huh? I've got this thing. If you are like me, maybe you will find it helpful. I'm normally a very hyperactive and always like almost to the point of intrusion, you know, like meddlesome guy, you know, when there's a bunch of people around me, I'm like, hey, what's going on? Like one of those cockatoos or like these cheerful, playful birds. So I hang around with them. But one of the tricks that really helped me out was just like trying to purposefully tone yourself down and stay quiet for 5 minutes. Actually, you may even like keep a timer, like for 15 minutes, try to stay still and just, you know, bask in the comfort of your friendships alone. You will see that it's actually very rewarding and very emboldening. Try to do that if you want to, like, also like confidence ends in your head. And it's a kind of like quantum grade complicated relationship with being snobbish. You have to like instinctively know that you got nothing to prove. But in order to know this, you may have to internalize being better off than people somehow. But there are a couple of ways to do this. Like you may choose the snobbish route, which I did not choose. Or you may choose the I have nothing to prove to you guys route. And I got to that level of internalization because I already had my art and skills and like works to speak for myself. And knowing that and doing those things, like creating those works and art and like doing that thing for its own sake, it's almost like a Kantian philosophy thing at that junction. Doing those things for their own sake, you get to realize that, bro, you don't really have to like one-up anybody and just vibe alongside people. And then ultimately, you know, just exist in your social space and your community as that guy who's respected and people turn to. Let your works do the speaking for in your stead. I hope this helps. Have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons? Asks Noah. No, I haven't. Although in high school there was a fantasy role-playing game club. And I just basically, this was an extracurricular activity. I was in it for one semester. Basically, we hung out for an hour after school doing nothing, you know. And some friends of mine played Magic the Gathering. Others played other like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. Once I remember like joining this band and like trying to create a character. It was this weird character with a silver mask and like a bizarre alchemical gun or something. But I don't know. I never had that interest. I did not carry ahead with it, but I was really interested in the Monsters Manual books. So in the Dungeons and Dragons Club, one kid had the Monsters Manual, so we read that. I usually like hogged that and like looked at pictures of creatures. I didn't care much about the stats or like the die throw rules or like the Excel files about the creatures, but I really liked the creatures themselves and the art that went along with them. Monsters Manual, those were the days. Any interesting or unorthodox philosophical views, says Noah. Oh boy, man, you now ask the motherlode question. I have a lot. I voice some of them in this channel, others I keep private. But philosophically, what can I say? For example, I do believe that class conflict is going on in the world, actively in many developed societies, but it does not take place in the form that many people anticipate. It's not like the interwar 1920s class conflict, you know. You no longer have the smart or enlightened workers rising up. What happens is, in most of the world, you do have a lot of people who do menial jobs, and they really don't get along well with the people who have white-collar office jobs. And usually, because of that, throughout the world in these days, there's this reaction throughout the world, but it does not take a form that many people will find palatable, but it is class conflict right there. And this encompasses things like QAnon or a wide range of conspiracy theories. You know, on one hand you got the sort of lucky people who are educated, but is this really education in the classic sense of world, or in the classic sense of the word? Or is it just training to carry out some managerial tasks? Now, these people, on the surface, they're very smart. They're like nice people to hang around with. But every once often they drop a bomb like, oh, I recommended my house cleaning lady this awesome Netflix series, or you know, and then you realize the abject level of disconnection they have with the rest of the world, and even the rest of the people in their country who kind of take care of all the menial and weird and sort of unpopular tasks for them. They believe that everybody in the world wants to act like a college-educated person, but the reality is much different. On the other hand, the people who are less privileged, they also have this like vindictive zeal about themselves too, and maybe this is righteous, but this is just one of my philosophical views. I think class conflict is actively taking place, but it's really a weird and unpalatable thing, and I have no idea where it's going to take our world towards. What else? I mean, if you're talking about philosophy, I also believe that in my personal quasi-religious understanding that time is infinite, so the cool things you do always stay with you forever. That gives me personally lots of reasons to be more laid back, relaxed, you know. I express it in many of my videos. If you go back to the other videos in this channel and listen to them, you will find out I have an understanding that all life forms are sentient like people. I mean, you look at this little fly that, you know, I had this one time where I was on a boat and a little fly perched on my lap, and it was obviously thirsty. I happened to be drinking tea, so I had some sugar cubes with the tea. I chewed up the sugar cube and made a saliva sugar mix. I spat that out next to the fly. The fly could not fly away. It was really exhausted, and I could see it like lapping up the sugary thing, and then it got energized somehow and it flew off. Now at this point, if I was a normie, I could have chosen to kill the fly or swat it or something. But maybe all animals are Cartesian machines, but I could really feel that this creature was thankful. And if you spend any time in nature, you see a lot of interactions like this. Not just between you and nature, but also among animals themselves. And obviously, the more quote-unquote developed the animals get, the richer these interactions are. But even at minimal levels, these things are there. This is also another one of my personal idiosyncratic philosophical views. And so I got many, many more, so maybe we can do a whole other stream about those. For example, just recently I was with my extended family, and my understanding is, and I will like to go on record about this, unfortunately something big like another world war is about to happen. It's just based on what I've been reading about world politics and stuff. In the developed world, I think there's a mental health pandemic coming up. And these are mostly connected with the boomer generation, hoarding most of the wealth and creating nothing with it. When they perish, it's gonna be a very chaotic world. And very quickly, large swathes of the population are gonna be replaced in power, if not in population, if not in person, by a lot of these people who have been hovering in the background. And the more quote-unquote educated classes have been like ignoring, But it's gonna happen so fast that we're all gonna be surprised. And I think if you are one of the privileged, educated people who have been lucky enough to be, college educated or holding quote-unquote white-collar jobs for the past 20 years or something, one of the greatest challenges of our lifetime is going to be coming to a reckoning with this great change in balance. And I will also go on record that this is not some sort of a replacement theory or like some conspiracy bullshit. No, it's just the way populations behave when the sort of trickle-down scheme of economics and cultural capital becomes a bloated, unstable water tower, so to speak. And now that thing is gonna collapse. In order to avoid collapsing it, I think the powers of the world, that is to say, the great collusion of national and corporate powers in the developed world, they may attempt or at least try to seek recourse to a great global conflict, hoping for some controllable redistribution of wealth, but we will see how that fares. So that's another one of Daddy Kozman's unorthodox philosophical views. I've tried to articulate it well, cosmetically, but yeah, let's see how that pans out in the near future. More questions. Do you learn about technology like you do with biology? My dad does not care for biology, but he loves technology. He learns about microwaves and nuclear reactors for fun, so I get to hear about both technology and biology on my own. Interesting. I mean, I'm not much of a tech geek when it comes to tech news, because lots of tech news are actually stuff about products like electric cars and stuff. But I am interested about technology in the sense that it's about logistics and power generation and nutrition and like where the broad sinews of society lie. So in this day and age, everybody's celebrating the tech boom, the iZoom boom, products, apps, make an app, goddammit, apps and shit. But they forget that all of this kind of rests on the shoulders of giants. Everybody wants to make the next delivery app, or everybody wants to make the next Amazon, like the online shopping, dropshipping business. But none of these ideas work without an industrial base for you to ship products between, or like a society of people competent and cooperative enough to want to deliver goods and services, and the level of level of welfare or societal development, so that at least these gigs can support somebody throughout their life, But this gets ignored. And when it comes to being interested in technology, this is the thing that I am interested in, like rail networks, road connections, transport networks, communications networks. I'm really interested in that stuff. Like also, like your dad is really cool for being interested in nuclear reactors, because how much energy does a country have, How much energy can a person get to use, If a country has problems with energy distribution, you're not going to do anything productive by selling them new computers or launching the new iPad or tech services there. But yeah. That being said, I'm also interested in studying the way sometimes quote-unquote high-tech leapfrogs quote-unquote low-tech. And in many parts of Africa, for example, people really depend vitally on GSM or cell phone networks without having any sort of connected phone or road networks like the developed world has. And seeing how those hybrid techno-logistic societies evolve is always interesting to behold. So there. And my best wishes to your dad. Alright. 26. Do you ever learn about mechanical principles and apply it to your art? Now, I don't know what you mean about mechanical principles. Do you mean something like lifting large weights with a lever or something? I don't know. But I don't know if this is what you asked, but I am really interested in technical stuff in art, in terms of like how to lay down a background on canvas, how to make paint, how to lay down paint, how paint behaves, how lines behave. So I'm always technically trying to up my game. And one of the greatest realizations in that respect for me has been about lines. You see, I still do a lot of drawings with line art. And for example, when a creature has a mouth like an alligator and it's open, I used to draw every teeth and meticulously like draw every fold of the flesh. But then I realized by studying old masters actually, lines don't work as lines as we understand them, but they work as fields. So now when I'm drawing a crocodile-like creature with a big open long mouth, I just kind of shade the area in between the open mouth. Just give it a little dark shading, just go zigzag, and it conveys the idea of an open mouth in a weird way more realistically than drawing all the teeth individually does. So I don't know if that was your question, but things like this I'm really keen to catch up and always learn more about, and that way I get to improve my art. Certainly a way I am trying to develop artistically is in terms of legacy media. I think digital media lets everybody do everything, but it's also ephemeral and frustrating. So I'm trying to develop more in terms of a physical artist, and I want to like make things, a painting. It has to be like a physical board or a surface with actual paint on it that's in a frame, that's beautiful, that's enchanting, that people would like to possess as an object. That's the way I'm trying to develop as an artist. So there's that too. Okay, another question. What sci-fi technologies do you think are feasible and will happen in real life? Well, before starting off, let me mention which sci-fi technologies, in my humble opinion, are completely unfeasible. These include faster than light travel, a sort of mass colonization of Mars, or like a greater travel from Earth to outside the bounds of the solar system. Basically, we can still send lots of robots and stuff, and maybe establish tiny bases, but I think using Earth's mass and natural resources, it's just not feasible to send thousands of people. And at any rate, we don't even know how natural systems operate, so we can't really replicate Earth-like conditions outside the planet yet, and we never might. What else do I think is infeasible? Like laser guns, I think they're infeasible, and in every future scenario you got laser pistols or laser swords and something. It's laser. But I think even in like the 25th century, you're gonna have like real life guns, and I would rather have a space opera with lots of weird guns, like weird bullet and chemical guns, than lots of weird juju lasers. closer to the realms of possibility, I think AI is a great deal, but not as they usually portray it. So it will never be something like a general AI, like it will never have a evolution or initiative of its own, but it will be frighteningly effective at repeating, automating, or sort of fastening up conventional tasks, because lots of conventional tasks in the workplace during the day, they're already executed on a landscape or a playing arena of a computer space, So you get this false illusion that every task can be done efficiently by an AI, but actually not. It's only because most of our work has already been conducted on a computer environment for the past 30 odd years that AI seems so cruelly effective. But even then, I think there's something to be said about AI replacing or having profound effects on social life. And by this I mean movies like Her, starring Joaquin Phoenix, where there's this sort of AI girlfriend that this guy falls in love with and develops an infatuation with. And I think stuff like AI girlfriends or like AI chatbots replacing the girlfriend experience or boyfriend experience, they're gonna be very common, and they're gonna impact social life in quite weird and unpredictable ways. I don't think they will replace people, but they will place larger and less realistic expectations on people, People will expect their girlfriends or boyfriends to be as obedient and to the point and concise as AIs, and it's just gonna uncork a whole big can of worms basically in social life, as if we don't have any technologically created social melodies already. But yeah, I think that's gonna be a real big deal. In fact, one of my predictions is that a lot of people in the near future may go Amish on social media and socially mediated AI technologies altogether. People may just stop using smartphones because it stresses them too much, or it just gives them anxiety, body image issues, loneliness issues. And many people may turn into offline real life communities for a healthier life experience. Or it may be a hybrid model involving maybe just governments not allowing access to Instagram or Twitter outside of daylight hours, let's say. So when it's night, you can't use these websites at all, But there will also be other weird things, like maybe some countries will make it mandatory for real ID. So you will have to sign in with your fingerprints or national ID. In fact, citizenship in a certain country, just like starting countries or getting paid or applying for social aid these days, citizenship in countries might be used to register to online services or social media. Different countries may devolve into different social media spheres, so the universality we have today may be gone or fractured. You are already seeing something like this with China and Russia, but imagine a near future where Slovakia has a different YouTube than Turkey has and then the audiences are not as freely flowing as they used to be. It's gonna be a fall of the Babel Tower kind of situation. But I don't know. Also recall that I predict a great global conflict or a great period of global scarcity or just global bad times somehow. And how will AI be used in mediating its after effects? Maybe you will have things like Ryan Gosling's virtual girlfriend in Blade Runner, Joy. That was a really poignant scene. The rest of the movie was also great, but that whole little arc with Kay, played by Ryan Gosling, and the virtual girl, it was really poignant. And maybe you will see something like that being used to connect a lot of people to life. And then on top of that, now add the capabilities that virtual or visual AI is gonna have. You may really have something like a cam girlfriend who will appear to you as you wish. And if you're a guy, it's not just very hard to satisfy a guy like that, just with the exact mix of tailored looks and quotes and speech patterns. And the scary thing is we got so much of that already committed to digital storage media now that reproducing something like this will be easy. Don't get me wrong, a smart person will be able to distinguish a virtual girlfriend from a real girlfriend, just like that. But still, like a drug, a lot of people, man and woman, especially when they're older and lonelier, may actually depend on these virtual avatars like pets. But it's just so dark and toxic to contemplate, and I don't know. I mean, I would rather live in a 1970s style society. One of my favorite sci-fi scenarios does not involve any amount of high tech, but somehow microchips never develop beyond a certain extent, and basically we are stuck with Amiga level tech for the next 50 years. So it's gonna be the year 2100, but people still have Amiga computers. Internet is still like very primordial, and it's still like only limited to public libraries and stuff. The rest of technology somehow evolves as it did, more or less. But that sort of society, it would be far more interesting to consider, and it seems more like refreshing than the wildest technological fantasy, if you know what I mean. If you listened to me so far, just comment, "I want a low-tech utopia Kozuman daddy," so I know that you've been listening, and together we can beat the algorithm. Okay, moving on. Alright. When you're bored, do you immediately start drawing or do you read a book? Asks Nathan. Is there a preference? Well, given a choice, I think 70% of the time I would rather draw or sketch something. But the exception comes when I'm in a public transport vehicle or I'm taking a trip somehow where I'm not doing the driving, obviously. And there I would always like to read. I think there are like two gears in the human mind, and one of them is a visual activity, a gear for visual activity. And then there's a gear for semantic activity, that is to say reading or speaking. And even when I'm drawing, I indirectly quote-unquote read stuff by listening to lots of podcasts and stuff, so there's that. But sometimes when my mind is too tired for words or thoughts, I just draw, so I just articulate stuff visually without thinking too much about it. So I think 65% of the time I draw, and I think 35% of the time I read. And I do have a healthy habit of reading books from cover to cover once every month, or it depends. Sometimes I finish them in a day or two. Sometimes it takes me 2 months or something if they're complicated, but I really like doing that. I actually have a book stamp for my personal library, and it says started reading on whenever, finished reading on whenever. And when I pull a book from my library and just look at stuff, I always see when I read and I always see what I read. And it's just a nice kind of anchoring low-tech thing to do with life. I did contemplate getting a Kindle or one of those e-readers, and they're quite good for big academic books and stuff, but I would never exchange paperbacks. I don't know. I'm just old-fashioned that way. There's just a kind of calming effect to operating something that's not a device, because we are always operating devices all the time. I fucking sat down in front of my desk this morning, took care of emails, like some bill situations, some commissions. 80% of the time I was operating a device with a monitor. And when you think about it, this is cool and effective, of course, but you don't do that without that thing also doing something to your brain. So there, yes. Now a really nice question from Noah. What are some aspects of American culture that could be used in speculative stories? I see how your country's culture affects your art. How can I use my culture to affect my art? Says Noah. Well, I do live in Turkey, and I consider all of Turkish culture, Ottoman culture, Byzantine culture, before that Roman, Hellenistic, Hittite, Phrygian, Assyrian, or I consider the entirety of the culture of the antiquity to be part of my foundational culture. And I guess it does affect my work somehow. One of my favorite things when traveling within Turkey is to go at a local museum and I just look at the stuff there, like artifacts or like things they have on display, and sometimes I just sketch them, just drawing those incomplete forms of statues and friezes and mosaics. That's a really creative exercise. Plus there's a lot of stuff in museums that, like, if you get to just spend some time and look at them, you see that people in the ancient world were extremely creative. and extremely talented. So a lot of stuff to inspire everybody. But I'm also inspired inspired by the sensibility of things. That is to say, some of time, if you read my short fiction, and you can just go to cmkozeman.com/stories.html, in a lot of my fantastic weird stories, there's a sense of different species or civilizations having lived in the past, non-human species. Of course, this comes directly from the cities and the places I've lived in and I've traveled through. It's not rare in Turkey to see a building left over from the Roman Empire now being used as a kind of car repair shop or a metal shop, So these things are not only there, they are like inheritances from a previous world, but they're also baked into the daily culture of life itself. So you don't, in cases, although this is changing, in cases you don't have them like as museums or places to go, but they're actually like part and parcel of the actual life. I mean, one of my favorite memories is I was just walking through the neighborhood of Üsküdar in Asiatic Istanbul. That's the famous Scutari, to those of you who know a bit about history. And I was just like going through weird dark streets and like narrow alleys and stuff. And behind the modern apartment block, there's just a little empty clearing, something like a little field. And in the middle of this field, there was a Byzantine column capital just laying around like that. And kids were like climbing on it and jumping up and down and playing. And it's just like the most Miyazaki-esque, beautiful setting of high fantasy ever imaginable. But only in my case, it's real. Then I kept walking through Scutari. I went down to the marketplace, had a bowl of fish soup. Oh my God, what a life, what a day. And if you watch my travel documentaries in this channel, there are a lot of little moments like that. I mean, I can't pinpoint them all, but there are a lot of nice, neat moments like that, which really make living in this part of the world unique. In comparison, living in, let's say, Mephistophelian cultures like Western Europe, the UK, or the United States, although the UK has its own deep arcane history too, and to a degree Europe does too. But in these places, your life is more regulated. I think it's worst in places like Canada or New Zealand or Australia, where like everything you do, you have to have a reason for being somewhere. And like you gotta be there, you gotta be here, you gotta have a car. Everything is zoned, clearly differentiated. Life is a selection of drop-down menus. They are very effective, but they do kind of take the whole sense of mystery out of the whole equation. And you rarely get moments like, well, the moment I had with the Byzantine column capital behind the building and the children playing on it. I think this is why there's such a desire for the remystification of the world in the Western world, especially in North America. I mean, people like to go urban exploring, they go to abandoned factories and stuff. They just want to have an experience that's not predicted, not laid out, that's not transactional, You don't pay to get in and read a bunch of labels about a place. You just actually explore it, live it by yourself, and make it your own. And these memories are far more valuable than those transactional memories. I mean, of course, things like going to Disneyland, they're fun too, but you kind of know what you're getting in for. But in cases like this, you don't know what you're getting in for. And even when you're exploring an abandoned mall, I mean, it's not 1,000 years of history, it's just been like empty for the last 10 years. But even doing that makes the whole experience more unique and valuable. So that's my comparison. But now, going back to Noah's question, when we consider the good and nice things about American culture, I mean, we could begin from the whole diversity angle. And I mean, it really is like the American sense of diversity you really don't have anywhere else. I mean, in European countries, you have people coming from ex-colonial places and stuff, but in Europe and the UK, the whole sense of being a second-class citizen is still there. You can still feel it. In America, you can really have people from Nicaragua or people from Iran or people from Poland. Just if they follow the rules, and yeah, as we explained before, the rules are a bit soul-sucking, but still, if you follow the rules, you can be an American just as much as, let's say, not everybody, but many other people out there. And in a generation, like your kids or your relatives can even be a more firm part of this whole experiment in life. And the thing that's so great about the States is that despite the totally unfair and yawning absence of any social security webs, if you work and if you put like some elbow grease into things compared to the rest of the world, okay? Compared to the rest of the world, yeah, there are a lot of like uneven and shit deals in the US too. And the whole world is getting more unfair day by day. But even with that factored in, compared to other parts of the world, like places like Russia or I don't know, many other countries, including my own, like there are less baked in unfair mechanisms in society. I mean, in places like, well, I'm not going to name any countries, but in many countries, many of the developing countries, you need to know people or you need to have some extremely unfair connections just to be able to live the life of an average middle class or even lower middle class person in the United States. You have Amazon.com, you can order anything. If you're resourceful, there's no way why you can't have a very fulfilling life. And that's what I like about the States. Of course, that's subject to change. I mean, there are like swathes of the United States that are devastated by opioid epidemics or like the destruction of the environment or the wholesale destruction of communities by the export of vital industries to China. That's one like dirty trick they pulled on their own people. I mean, goddamn motherfuckers really went on and used a trick most empires would play on their colonies, on their own heartland, and now they're suffering for it. So there's that. Now you got lots of more empty factories to urbex and shit, but maybe life is a little less certain. But still, compared to many other places in the world, those are the nice things about the States. You got a diversity of people, you got a diversity of communities with in a sort of more or less even playing field compared to other parts of the world. You got actual mechanisms that work. Now, like when you're in Turkey and someone says, I'm gonna do, let me just give you a very simple example. When somebody says, here is the address you should send the receipt to, okay? And you make a fucking receipt. And then there's like 6 email exchanges. I have to like confirm by phone and then email written and in like spoken word. Are you sure this is the right address? Because something doesn't look like legit. Like this is a bill for an artwork, but the address you're giving for me to send the receipt is a tourism company. Oh, no, it's fine. Okay, you send the fucking receipt. In 2 goddamn days, somebody calls. I'm very sorry, there's been a terrible mistake. Now let me tell you. And like she gives you like 10 minutes, wastes 10 minutes of your life explaining how complicated things are for them. I mean, what the fuck do I care? Then she gets to the gist. And then, so there's been a mistake. Yeah. Could you cancel that bill and like make us a new one? Because that's gonna take me a lot of time. But I don't care about time, but it's also gonna cost me money. Because now I'm gonna have to like work with the accountant again, cancel the old bill, whatever. So in lots of parts of the world, when people say they're gonna do something, they do a shit job, you know. It's not just particular to my own loving part of the world. Let's say many places east of the Danube, you got this problem. Or maybe, I don't know, east of the British Channel. I don't know. So you got a lot of kerfuffles and shit. But in the States, when people there say they're gonna do something, that shit gets done. And it gets done like very openly, very transparently. They're like terrifically efficient. Of course, they can't not afford to be efficient because, you know, they can also die because of a disease. Or in most cases, these people are like one car breakdown away from like a total financial and spiritual collapse of their lives. So that's the Mephistophelian angle. But also when a group of Americans like get together to work, like whether they're like American Americans or Polish Americans or Nicaraguan Americans, whatever, they're really like, they're very business-like, brisk, and like no bullshit about it. That's one of the things I really like about it. And I think you can get a sense of this like American sensibility in a lot of American science fiction. One of my favorites is a very obvious example, the Star Wars Cantina experience in the original Star Wars film. And here, if you haven't watched these films, Luke Skywalker goes to a bar, and the bar is full of these crazy aliens. Like some of them look like bats, cats, one-eyed aliens, 6-fingered aliens, weird girl aliens, mantis aliens. They're all having a ball. And like you have to be blind if you don't realize the allegory of America in there. I think George Lucas did a great job with that. There are even more detailed and less known works of fiction, such as the Well World series. That's Well World by Jack L. Chalker. And the well world is a kind of like, imagine a globe divided into lots of hexagonal subworlds, and each subworld is home to another intelligent species, but they all operate more or less by the same laws. But so they have adventures and stuff, but like a diversity of people on an equal footing. That's the American experience, and I think it also reflects in works like with the well world. Also, because of what I just described, America is like one of the few places where you can find genuinely deranged and evil people. And these are not people because they have been wronged or they have had traumas in the past. No, they're like in the States because, well, nobody's busy with anybody else's lives. Sometimes you get like direct evil, like in a scale and form not seen anywhere else in the world. I mean, why do you think all the mass murderers, most of them come from the States, or the mass shooters? So there's that. So if you're writing fiction, I mean, the American experience is also like a setting which really makes these like satanic people possible. And I'm not saying satanic in the sense of devil worship or whatever, but like these like truly deranged people. I think, who was it? Cormac McCarthy. He had like loads of like great American books. I think he's one of the best authors in the States. Let me look at that. Blood Meridian. Yeah, Blood Meridian. Now in that book there's like a judge character or something. I haven't read it, but I've listened to summaries of this book. And this guy is like truly and like awfully evil. In a way you can only like, in a way that could only be allowed to exist in the United States. So that's also another element of the American fiction psychogeography experience. So if you look at those, and maybe so like, let's give a summary of the American psycho-fictional geography. You got a sense of genuine opportunity, a sense of genuine diversity, a sense of level playing ground, but you also have like, I mean, the floor really is lava in the United States. So there's that. There are real monsters out there. And I think in the current decades, there's also a sense of the remystification of the world. So the landscape is no longer a vast plain for like suburban people to drive from point A to point B, but there are also like real areas of mystery to discover in the States as well. So these are my opinions about the psychogeography of the American landscape and the American experience. Heck, I mean, I'll just fucking say it. I applied to the green card lottery, you know, and I'm just so hopeful. If this comes true and if I win it, I am also looking forward to being a part of the great American psychosexual experiment. So there. By the way, if you're in the States and if you want to have me as a guest speaker or something, I always repeat this announcement. Just pay for my trip, pay for my visa expenses, and I will gladly be a speaker at your university or like college or whatever. And you're free to like charge for tickets and stuff. Like I won't want any other money aside from my board, keep and travel costs. And get me some burgers and shit for me to eat. That's all, really. Alright, what's your opinion on your voice? Asks my dear friend Noah Turner. I like my voice. I used to... Okay, if you've been a long time fan of this channel, in up to the previous year, which was 2022, I was telling people to listen to my videos in a faster setting so it would sound more faster and smoother. But lately I've been discovering like the delicacies of saying things slowly and letting the words sink in, like little knives or the machine clicking jaws of a praying mantis working slowly as she eats your face bit by bit. Oh, I love my voice. I love my accent. I mean, I pretty much had no problems with the way I looked and spoke. I always embraced being who I was because I got no other choice, you know, so better be happy about it. Sometimes I actually wish I could say less. I got this thing, so I got this propensity to overspeak sometimes because I'm a bit like a cockatoo. Just never stop. My eyeballs grow big and small. I turn my head and it's like, what are you, man? So there is my budgie cockatoo impression. But I also like sounding a bit like that lion Scar voiced by Jeremy Irons. And I like kind of like, oh, it's you again, huh? I haven't seen the likes of you around here in a while. I don't think you had it in you, to be honest. Oh well. That has been a speech by yours truly, CM Kozeman. I also like my sibilant weird accent too. I mean, a lot of dumb fucks in my part of the world. You wouldn't believe the fees they pay for accent coaches. So this is just like a busybody who comes in and says, Papa, Harry Potter. They teach them like British or American accents, depending on where the hell in the world these people want to run off to. And these people like, Papa, Harry Potter. But you ask them to string two words together, fuck, they're still gonna sink. I mean, they got no thoughts to contribute. Timid, pusillanimous, defeated from the get-go. Who cares if you got the best accent? They don't have an original bone in their body. They don't have an original thought in their minds. And I mean, okay. In my quiet, sadistic side, I really like kind of tooling around with these situations of life. But okay, let's not get carried away too much with it because, as they say, gülme komşuna gelir başına. Speaking about my voice, I also love dropping Turkish witticisms in the middle of my conversations. Sometimes, as they say in this part of the world, what should I say? Oh well. Bize gülüp geçme ey yolcu. Bir gün sen de bizim gibi olacaksın. Like, do not laugh at us, oh passerby. One day you will be just the same. Oh my god, Noah, you got me going. Now I'm just gonna speak my mouth off, so I'd better shut the F up. Thank you all for listening. Thanks especially to Noah for these amazing questions. And now just to reiterate, Noah lives in Pennsylvania, wants to attend to Cornell University to study entomology or biotechnology. Throughout the last 3 videos, which I've concluded with this one on the 25th of December. So, Merry Christmas to everybody. I've been having a joyful time answering Noah's questions. Your questions are very insightful. With a few prompts, you get, you got me to say so much. So, I guess if this is any sign of your intellectual prowess, I'm sure you will have a great time getting into Cornell. And, get in touch with me if you need any other questions answered. This applies not just to Noah, but everybody who's listening. If you support me on Patreon, you get to ask questions and I get to answer them all. Merry Christmas, everybody. Dear Kozemanites, if you listened to me this far, let's conclude. Please tell me to humiliate me with your words, Daddy Kozeman. So I know you watched this far. And as always, that's a joke. I'm just kidding, America. Anyways, I'm just kidding. I love you all. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Have a nice time. Goodbye.